I'm David Feldman, coming to you from an air shaft overlooking a parking garage somewhere in Manhattan where the temperature is killing me and I have no air conditioner. Well, Joe Biden was looking for some positive news, and he got some today. He tested positive for COVID. The White House says the president is working in isolation, so it's pretty much business as usual. It's not like Biden's going to get on Air Force One and fly down to West Virginia to take on Joe Manchin. No, he announced his big executive order on climate change this week in Massachusetts. Really brave, Joe, going into enemy territory when it comes to climate change. Massachusetts. I hope he won over the voters in Massachusetts when it comes to climate change. No, you announce your executive order in West Virginia or in Arizona, where Sinema is from. You go to West Virginia to challenge Joe Manchin, or you go to Arizona, where Sinema is, and they're feeling the record heat in Arizona and Massachusetts. Well, Biden tested positive this morning, and he's taking the antiviral drug Paxlovid, which is an emergency release made possible by the Food and Drug Administration. Meanwhile, the trial of Steve Bannon is continuing this week. He faces misdemeanor contempt of Congress charges after he ignored a subpoena to appear before the January 6th committee. The January 6th committee wants to know what Bannon was planning the night before the insurrection over at the Willard Hotel, which is right next door to the White House. They subpoenaed Steve Bannon so he would tell the committee what exactly he meant when he said to his podcast listeners this on January 5th.
All hell is going to break loose tomorrow.
What do you think he meant by that? It was January 5th. He was talking to his podcast listeners, and he said the night before, what did he?
All hell is going to break loose tomorrow.
Gee, I wonder what he was talking about. Maybe he was talking about the chili cheesesteak he ate and was worried about what he was going to do to the bathroom, or maybe it was the January 6th riot. Well, his defense, he's on trial this week. The defense rested without Bannon ever taking the stand. Bannon pleaded not guilty. If convicted, Steve Bannon would face a minimum of 30 days in prison. On Tuesday, speaking of all hell breaking loose, Chipotle, did I pronounce it properly? Chipotle? Or Chipotle or whatever. Chipotle closed the first restaurant in its chain to go union. Last month, workers in an Augusta, Maine Chipotle filed with the National Labor Relations Board saying they have voted to unionize. Chipotle responded by closing down the restaurant. Chipotle union organizer Brandy McNeese said in a statement, quote, "This is union busting 101, and there is nothing that motivates us to fight harder than this underhanded attempt to shut down the labor movement within their stores." Chipotle, she went on to say, is scared because they know how powerful we are, and if we catch fire like the unionization effort over at Starbucks, they won't be able to stop us. Well, Starbucks is closing stores, and they're firing union organizers, and they're refusing, despite what the law says, Starbucks is refusing to negotiate with the Starbucks union the same way Jeff Bezos over at Amazon is refusing to negotiate with Christian Smalls and the Amazon labor union. They don't obey the laws of America. By law, Starbucks, Chipotle, and Amazon have to negotiate with the workers, but they don't. They are immune to our taxation laws and our labor laws. Julian Assange is not immune to American law. He awaits extradition to the United States on 17 charges of violating a more than 100-year-old law called the Espionage Act. A judge in Great Britain recently ruled that Assange must be turned over to American authorities, but lawyers for Assange now say they will submit yet another appeal to the British courts in late August. In Britain, Prime Minister Boris Johnson said goodbye. Here is his farewell message.
I've helped to get this country through a pandemic and helped save another country from barbarism. And frankly, that's enough to be going on with. Mission largely accomplished. For now.
Wow, he said he accomplished a lot as prime minister. He said that he helped Great Britain stave off the COVID infection, and he saved Ukraine. Mission mostly accomplished. Where have I heard that before? What other fool said that? I can't remember. I think I heard somebody else as dangerous as Boris Yeltsin saying mission accomplished. I don't remember where. Well, here is Boris's last lesson that he wanted to impart to his fellow parliamentarians. This is the message that Boris Johnson wants to leave us with.
Remember, above all, it's not Twitter that counts. It's the people that sent us here.
It's not Twitter that counts. It's the people who sent us to the parliament. Not most Brits, just the people we're beholden to. Well, I guess that's the big news coming out of Great Britain. Nothing else to report about late breaking news.
Some breaking news now. Sky News understands the RAF has halted flights in and out of RAF Brize Norton because the runway has melted in this extreme weather.
I guess he didn't say anything about climate change when he said goodbye. The runway is melting. Well, who cares? That's Great Britain. I can't help it if they can't get their shit together when it comes to climate change. That's Great Britain. We got it together here in the United States.
Dallas, Oklahoma City, and Tulsa all approaching 110 degrees in the days ahead. Doctors and public officials urging caution tonight, urging Americans to stay inside if possible, to stay cool, and of course, hydrate. Make sure you're drinking water. Power grids under stress, an anxious eye on Texas, of course, after what happened there before. And here in New York tonight, Con Ed sending alerts to customers to conserve power.
Wow. Okay. Lots and lots and lots to get to today. Of course, the deadly heat waves, climate change, abortion, guns, and January 6th. A lot of focus, of course, on the hearings. But what about Merrick Garland over at the Justice Department? Well, yesterday, Merrick Garland was giving a press conference, and he was asked whether or not he was willing to prosecute Donald Trump. Here's what he said. You got to listen. It's a little low.
And look, no person is above the law in this country.
No person is above the law in this country. So in other words, he's not going to prosecute Donald Trump. Look, he's got to go before a jury and convict Donald Trump. 75 million people voted for this clown. Half the jury has to, if you're going to pick a jury, half that jury has to have voted for Trump. I just don't see how you get a conviction. I just don't see how it's possible. Well, on Wednesday, the Senate Judiciary Committee held hearings to mark up their 2021 assault weapons ban. They're going to try to bring back the assault weapons ban. I guess some stuff has been happening that concerns them. And they're also going to try to pass the Equal Access for Victims of Gun Violence Act. David Hogg, founder of March for Our Lives and a survivor of the shooting in Parkland 4 years ago, he interrupted a House committee that was also holding hearings on the assault weapons ban. Hogg shouted at Republican Congressman Andy Biggs, who claimed Instead of an assault weapons ban, we need Americans to be armed against an invasion along the southern border. David Hogg screamed at him, quote, "The shooter at my high school was anti-Semitic, anti-Black, and racist. The shooter in El Paso described it as an invasion." What Hogg meant by it, he was referring to the 2019 shooting at a Texas Walmart. Hogg went on to say those guns are coming from the United States of America. They aren't coming from Mexico. You are reiterating the points of a mass shooter, sir. Hogg was forcibly removed from the hearing by Capitol Police. Well, back in the Senate, here is what Senator Tammy Duckworth had to say about the assault weapons ban.
I refuse to do nothing in the face of a deadly epidemic of gun violence that is now the leading cause of death of young Americans. Let me say that now. The leading cause of death of Americans under the age of 16 in this country isn't cancer, isn't car accidents, it's gun violence. Only in America.
Only in America. That's Senator Tammy Duckworth, a Democrat who served in Iraq, where she lost both her legs. She represents Illinois, where a mass shooting took place on July 4th in Highland Park. 7 people were shot to death. Nancy Rottering is the mayor of Highland Park, and here's what she told the committee yesterday.
And the most disturbing part, this is the norm in our country. Highland Park had the uniquely American experience of a 4th of July parade turn into what has now become a uniquely American experience of a mass shooting. How do we call this freedom? Other advanced nations live free of fear of gun violence, and we know that mental health issues exist everywhere in our world. American mayors, and I've talked to several in these past few weeks, fear not if, but when a mass shooting is going to hit our towns. What's different about the U.S.? U.S. has civilian access to assault weapons and large capacity magazines. That is the only differentiating factor. In 2013, in the wake of Sandy Hook, we as a city banned assault weapons and large capacity magazines. We knew that a federal ban would be the most effective, but a local ban reflecting the values of our community was our only option under the law. Local governments cannot do this alone. Congress must take action. You must federally ban assault weapons and large capacity magazines. Today is the day to start saving lives. Thank you.
Yeah, if you live in Illinois, you depend on the federal government to stop the flow of assault weapons and guns coming into your state. You can pass gun laws in Highland Park, but you're right next door to Indiana, where on July 1st, they said anybody can carry a concealed weapons. This isn't a states' rights issue. This is the federal government. The federal government has to step in and do something about this. I love what she said. You call this freedom? They're so busy talking, about the Second Amendment. People keep talking about their freedoms. Well, the rest of us have zero freedom because of their obsession with guns. Abortion. Judge Clarence Thomas made it clear that the court isn't stopping with Roe v. Wade. He wants to go after gay marriage, even gay sex and contraception. The Democrats were accused of being asleep at the switch for never bothering to codify a woman's right to abortion as a law that could not be overturned by right-wing extremist judges sitting on the Supreme Court. A week ago, the House passed 2 bills that would guarantee a woman's right to an abortion, as well as her right to travel across state lines to get that abortion. It passed, but it passed pretty much along party lines. Republicans would not vote for it, which means a bill legalizing abortion will not get the 60 votes needed to overcome a filibuster in the Senate. This week, Nancy Pelosi's House passed a law legalizing gay marriage. Stefanik, a few Republicans, Liz Cheney, voted in favor of that. They passed another law in the House legalizing contraception. This is how far back this Supreme Court, this Republican Party wants to take us. They want to overturn Griswold from the 60s and take away our our right to buy contraception. Today, the House passed a law that would enshrine both a man and a woman's right to use contraception. Well, you would think that would pass overwhelmingly. No, 228 to 195. 195 Republicans voted against contraception. Here's Congresswoman Angie Craig. She is a Democrat from the great state of Minneapolis. Here's Congresswoman Angie Craig.
It's really about rolling back our rights, the rights of American women. I am disheartened. I am disappointed. And quite frankly, I'm appalled that we have to vote on this damn bill at all. First, they voted against codifying Roe. Then 77% of them, don't give the 47 credit, 77% of them yesterday voted against allowing my family and I to continue to exist as a family. This is not an extremist issue. This is an extremist GOP. They have turned into an extremist party, a radical party that is opposed to everything that my constituents value, freedom and liberty and their own rights.
This is great politics on behalf of Nancy Pelosi. This is great politics because she's forcing the Republican Party's hand. You know, we take it for granted that everybody wants contraception. We take it for granted that everybody is in favor of gay marriage. Everybody's in favor of gay sex. We took it for granted that, well, not everybody's in favor of abortion, but the Republicans, it was just a fundraising ploy. They weren't really trying to get rid of abortion. This is brilliant. You know, I don't like Nancy Pelosi, but this is a brilliant move to force the Republican hand on contraception, gay marriage, gay sex, and of course, abortion. Here's the frightening thing. We needed the courts in America to give us freedom to use contraception, freedom for an abortion. We needed the courts to give us freedom for gay marriage, freedom for interracial marriage, Loving versus Virginia, and freedom for gay sex. That was never enshrined in the federal laws. Why? I don't think that stuff could have passed for whatever reason. And now we're going to find that with a Democrat in the White House, the Democrats controlling the House and the Democrats barely controlling a Senate that is, you know, vulnerable to the filibuster, we're going to discover that in America, we cannot pass these basic human rights. What is it? It's, you know, a lot of people will say it's our system, the Electoral College. They'll say it's New York only getting 2 senators, the same as Wyoming. I understand that. But these issues, contraception, abortion, gay marriage, gay sex, these should be slam dunks, even with the structural disadvantages we have. It's very disheartening. It's not going to get passed. They're not going to codify, enshrine into our law the right to contraception, the right to an abortion, or the right to gay marriage. It's not going to happen. The Republicans are going to veto or are going to filibuster these bills. Good politics on behalf of Nancy Pelosi. The new polling is showing that in a generic survey, the Democrats are keeping the House. In a generic survey that doesn't factor in filibustering, and the Democrats are out fundraising the Republicans. So, you know, if you're worried about the Democratic Party, you know, this is smart politics. This is smart politics. Republican Congresswoman from Florida, Kat Cammack, voted against the contraception bill. Here's what she said.
This bill, the Right to Deception Act, is looking to solve a problem that doesn't exist. But more than that, in seeking to solve a problem that doesn't exist, you want to spend more of our taxpayer money to grow the size and scope of government and to allow more abortions to occur and kill our children. Cool. Y'all are a real piece of work. Folks back home, they see right through this, and they'll see through it in November. I urge opposition to this bill, and I yield the remainder of my time.
Yeah, there are structural disadvantages. Most people want contraception, but because of gerrymandering in Florida, you end up with a congresswoman like Kat Cammack. Anyway, all of this is overwhelming because the deplorables seem to be winning. And who are the deplorables? The richest 1%, not the same deplorables Hillary was talking about. The real deplorables are the richest 1% who control our government. They control our government by manipulating the insane, like, Congresswoman Kat Cammack. She's insane. They manipulate the undereducated, like Florida Congresswoman Kat Cammack. The sexually frustrated, I think that would be Kat Cammack. They manipulate the gun-worshiping, superstitious buffoons who prefer religion, who choose hatred and discrimination over a functioning government that works for everyone. What the richest 1% doesn't want us to realize is only government can solve our problems. Let me repeat. Only government can solve our problems, period. And what we are witnessing right now in America is the apotheosis of a 50-year war against government in an attempt to take over government. These people, the 1%, demonized government, said it was evil, and while they were doing that, they took over the reins of power. The very government they call evil, they now own. So what we're feeling right now, this demoralization, all of this, the heat, the mass shootings, the threat to what's left of our republic, it's all because the richest 1% staged a slow motion coup d'etat and took over that evil government. The rich tell us government is the enemy, but they don't believe that. They are all for government. They can't exist. The rich cannot exist without government. For example, the Senate this week passed a bill that would provide $52 billion in subsidies to chip makers, to Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley is getting $52 billion from the federal government. We won't get any ownership, right? We're just going to give money to Intel, NVIDIA. We're just going to give them money and no ownership, no stock ownership. Here's $52 billion. It's not even discussed. The idea of our giving these chip manufacturers $52 billion and not getting any shares in the business is out of the question. That would be socialism. Socialism for us, not socialism. Just, if you give them $52 billion and don't ask for anything in return, that's just socialism for corporate America and the wealthiest 1%. So there's no problem with that kind of socialism. The chip companies are getting $52 billion of our tax dollars. It passed in the Senate 64-34. So that means it has a filibuster-proof majority. It's bipartisan. The Republicans are on board because they claim, this is how they justify it, it's about national security. They're worried that the Defense Department is purchasing semiconductor chips from China, so it's dangerous. So $52, $54, $55 billion for Silicon Valley, for the chip makers. Plenty of money. And by the way, this isn't a bailout. It's not like Intel or NVIDIA needs help, like they're going out of business. Intel, NVIDIA, and they're getting like a huge chunk of this money. They're doing just fine. But the federal government is giving them $52 billion just to encourage them to keep their factories here in America. there are other ways to encourage Intel to keep factories here in America through taxation, by actually they're giving us, instead of our giving them $52 billion to stay in America, we tax them if they don't stay in America. That's how normal, rational societies operate. Meanwhile, scientists say a more contagious wave of COVID is hitting America and could end up infecting 100 million of us. But the Senate can't seem to pass a $10 billion COVID relief bill that would provide for free testing, as well as making vaccines and therapeutics readily available. If not free, maybe affordable. So we have money for Intel and Nvidium, no money for Americans, so they go and get tested and get vaccinated. No money for that. $60 billion in weapons for Ukraine, though, and counting. Ukraine's First Lady, Olena Zelenska, addressed members of Congress this week. Unprecedented. Never before has the First Lady of another country spoken before Congress. She spoke before members of Congress, warning of a humanitarian disaster facing her country. Well, a humanitarian disaster. And what is her solution? Weapons. It's the same identical humanitarian disaster facing Yemen, which has been caused by weapons, American weapons. But meanwhile, Joe Biden was off in Saudi Arabia last week making nice. No mention of Yemen, no concern about the largest cholera epidemic on the planet caused by the Saudi Arabians in Yemen. No, just pump more oil. That's all he asked of the Saudi Arabians. And now there's a humanitarian disaster in Ukraine, 5-6 million refugees, Ukraine not doing well, Putin doubling down in the south. Is probably going to do to the separatist territory what he did with Crimea and just declare it Russian. But the solution, more weapons. And the First Lady of Ukraine spoke before Congress and had their ear because she was asking for weapons. She wasn't asking for food or medicine. She was asking for weapons. When's the last time Reverend Barber from the Poor People's Campaign addressed Congress? We're giving weapons to Ukraine with no strings attached, no inspector general, no accountability. But here in America, you want food stamps? You want welfare? Well, you want welfare. Have you looked for work this week? Let me see your bank statements to make sure you're not ripping off our government. Money for the chip makers, $52 billion for Intel and Nvidium. Money for weapons, $60-70 billion for Ukraine. No money for COVID. No money for COVID here in the United States, where they say 250,000 more Americans will die in the next 2 years. No money for our schools. Look, the government of the United States is not dysfunctional. It is working perfectly, just not for us. It works. If you're a chip maker, if you own stock in Nvidium or Intel, or if you own stock in the Carlyle Group like David Rubenstein, it's working swell. This is the most efficient government in the history of civilization if you're part of the richest 1%. For the past 50 years, the richest 1% have rebuilt government in their own image. Now, not to belabor the point, but right before this big vote on the $52 to $53 billion bailout for Silicon Valley, for the chip manufacturers, our Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, Democrat, purchased as much as $5 million in NVIDIA stock. NVIDIA is a chip maker. They're going to be one of the biggest beneficiaries of the $52 billion bailout for chip makers. And she went ahead and took her cut. She bought $5 million in NVIDIA stock. She says she didn't buy the stock. Her husband did, and she says there's nothing wrong with that. Okay? Nothing wrong with that. I would expect that from the Republicans, maybe, but from the Democrats who are supposed to speak for labor, for tax-paying American citizens to protect us from corporate corruption, I would expect our leaders in the Democratic Party not to have $5 million to play the stock market with. I expect people who speak for me not to have that kind of money. Go join the Republican Party. So government isn't in trouble. Government isn't going anywhere. Democracy is, our republic is, you and I are, but government is doing just fine because it is controlled by Wall Street and corporate America and the richest families. Government is stronger than ever, but government is governing the people instead of the other way around. So I want to talk about credit cards for a second. How is it possible that how could it possibly cost more to put something on my credit card? I don't see how that's possible. There is cheap money out there, or there was cheap money out there, but it wasn't for the consumers, not your credit card. The credit card companies lend money like the Gambino family, usurious interest rates. Rates, by the way, that our Christian evangelical friends should be talking about. This is something the religious right should be up in arms against. They should be going after the credit card companies because usurious interest rates are strictly prohibited by the Old Testament and the New Testament. This is anti-Judeo-Christian. Ezekiel. This is from Ezekiel. If he lends at interest and takes profit, shall he then live? No, he shall not live. Old Testament. He has done all these abominations. He shall surely die. His blood shall be upon himself. That's Ezekiel. This is Deuteronomy. This is Old Testament. You shall not charge interest on loans to your brother. By brother, it means your fellow countryman. You shall not charge interest on loans to your brother, your fellow countryman. Interest on money, interest on food, interest on anything that is lent for interest, right? Your credit card company makes you borrow money to pay off interest. That's a sin, making somebody do that, that's a sin, according to Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy says you may charge a foreigner interest. That means from another country, but you may not charge a fellow countryman interest. Leviticus, you shall not lend him your money at interest nor give him your food for profit. You're not allowed to sell food at above cost. Leviticus. Exodus, this is God talking. Old Testament God. I'll get to New Testament God. I'll get to Jesus in a second. Exodus. If you lend money to any of my people with you who is poor, you shall not act like a moneylender to them, and you shall not exact interest from them. God is saying you can lend money, but you can't be a money lender. You can't collect interest. If you ever take your neighbor's coat as collateral for a loan, you shall return it to him immediately before the sun goes down, for that is his only covering, and it is his only covering for his body, so how else shall he sleep? And if he cries to me, I will know what you have done to him, for I, unlike you, am compassionate. This is some heavy shit from God to the credit card companies. Matthew, now we're talking Jesus. This is what Jesus said. No one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. Jesus goes on to say, you cannot serve God and money. The credit card companies are godless. But somehow our Christian nationalists who rule over the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, they have no problem with the moneylenders who have free reign in this country. The moneylenders have free reign in this country. You know, Giuliani got rid of the mafia in the 80s, and we just replaced the mafia with the banks. And I'm being serious about this. The banks lend money just like mobsters, exactly like mobsters. So, you know, with Jerome Powell over at the Federal Reserve raising interest rates, I simply do not see how his raising interest rates, I just don't see how the credit card companies could possibly raise my interest rates more than they already have. You know, for a couple of months, I talked about this about 2 weeks ago. I found that I had an old credit card and I had left $700 on it, and I forgot about it. By the time I realized that I left $700 on this credit card, the debt pretty much doubled and then some. And we're not talking about years, we're talking about months that it doubled. I think the credit card debt they were charging me was something like 30% a year. And I looked into this. The debt is added on each month. So you're paying 30% interest on the interest plus fees. In other words, let's say you owe $700. Is it called amortizing? I don't know, but they charge you interest every month. So if you owe $700, the next month you owe something like $750, plus there's a $50 fee. So now you owe $800. And now you have to pay interest on the interest that was tacked on, plus you have to pay interest on the $50 fee that they tack on. So you no longer owe $700, you owe $800. And then each month they just keep tacking on interest and more fees. And within months, that $700 turns into $1,400. So I called Visa, and the woman on the phone could not explain to me how it doubled within months. She could not do the math. I kept her on the line, and she wanted to transfer me to a supervisor. I said, no, I want to know what you know. You're supposed to be able to help me here. Do the math. And I kind of, politely demanded that she do her job and explain the interest charges and the fees and how $700 becomes $1,500 in a matter of months. And I kept her on the phone for about an hour. I ended up liking her, and we have an email. We're going back and forth in email. She admitted over the phone during a conversation that we both knew Visa is recording, to enhance customer service by making sure the customer service rep never spills the beans on what a usurious racket the credit card industry is. So we both knew it was being taped, but she politely explained to me that over the phone that they really don't teach us how to calculate the interest for the customers, and we don't really understand the fees. And then she contacted me. She knew my name. She looked me up and she contacted me through my website. And we've been going back and forth anonymously. And she said to me that she is a first-generation American who went to college. This is the only job she can get. She said Visa doesn't train their customer service people on how to calculate the fees and interest or the rates and the charges, that they're discouraged from explaining to the customers why they owe what they owe. She said in an email to me, when you call her, she is incapable of providing information on how to reduce your payments or your debt, because that's not what Visa wants. They don't want you to pay off your debt. She admitted that she doesn't understand the nomenclature, these terms like APR, that it's all too complicated for her. And then she said in another email, she's dealing with tons of single moms who are putting medical bills on their credit cards, and they can't pay these medical bills back. And the debt for these medical bills, double every couple of months. And here's the thing, I looked into this. It's all perfectly legal because the government works fine. The government is not dysfunctional. It's working perfectly fine for the banks and the lenders. We even have a president from Delaware, which is the credit card capital of the world. The government is working just fine. You will not hear President Joe Biden talk about reining in credit cards. No way. Now, here's something that blew me away, and I had no idea. The federal government has absolutely no limits on interest rates a credit card company can charge. Zero. The federal government does not put a cap on the interest rates a credit card company can charge its customers. So whatever Jerome Powell is doing with interest rates, the credit card companies couldn't give a shit. They make their own rules because it's left to the individual states. It's up to the individual states to decide whether or not there's going to be a cap on interest rates. Now, usury laws are complicated on purpose because it's up to the states, states' rights. Some states place limits on how high the interest rates can be on borrowed money. But these laws mean nothing. They mean nothing. Most states have some kind of usury law, some kind of cap on interest rates. But I think they're called adhesion contracts. When you sign up for a credit card, there are terms of service that you never read, but you just click on them because you need the money, you need a credit card. So when you sign up for a credit card, when you agree on the terms of service, you sign away the bank's responsibility to obey those usury laws. When you sign up, again, you don't read the TOS, the terms of service. You just click yes. And once you click yes, all usury laws no longer apply. Poof, they disappear. You also lose the right to sue the credit card company. It has to go into arbitration. And guess who picks the mediator? The credit card companies. So the federal government has no caps on what a credit card company, the federal government has no caps on what a credit card company can charge in terms of interest rates. They leave it to the states to outlaw loan sharks, but it's all performative. It has the appearance of local government looking out for the lender, but that's a lie. It's a lie. There is no law to prevent lenders from making the terms of the loan predicated on the borrower's promise to waive their right to these caps that rein in the cost of borrowing. There are no laws that say you can't issue a credit card with a terms of service that waves away usury laws. So the government makes it look like they're protecting borrowers. But when you agree to a credit card, you can't get that credit card unless you waive your rights to government protection. You have no protection when you get a credit card. There are laws on the books that appear to protect you, but in order to get those credit cards, you have to sign away your right to those laws. In South Dakota, there are pretty much no limits on how much interest a credit card company can charge you. Now, if you owe below $5,000 on your credit card in South Dakota, theoretically, in South Dakota, the credit card company is only allowed to charge you 12% a year. But you waived away that cap when you sign up for the credit card. And after $5,000, according to South Dakota law, there is absolutely no limit on what Visa can charge you in interest. No limit. No limit whatsoever. Now, we talk a lot about Wall Street, but the truth is most banks, most credit card lenders have moved their operations into states like South Dakota that have no usury laws. Look and see where your credit card has been issued. Mine come from South Dakota, where there are no usury laws. Robert Manning, author of Credit Card Nation, writes that because of states' rights, because there is no federal usury law, no federal caps on interest rates, a bank, a lender, can move their headquarters to a quote unquote lender-friendly state like South Dakota and export the interest rate of that state to any customer. So if you are borrowing from South Dakota, a bank in South Dakota, they can jack up the interest rates to whatever they want. It's why a $700 balance on my credit card within months became $1,500. Check your credit card, find out what state it was issued from. I guarantee you it wasn't issued in the state of New York. Something like 50% of credit card companies issue their cards from states that are not where their headquarters are located, and they play fast and loose with the laws where they say, well, our company is headquartered here on Wall Street, but our credit card division is headquartered in South Dakota. Apple, for example, claims its headquarters are in Cupertino, California. But all its profits are collected in Reno, Nevada. Because of states' rights, because the federal government doesn't issue protections, Apple pays no income tax in California. It is subject to the income tax in the state of Nevada, which is zero. So Apple pays zero state income tax. So Cupertino, California, where Apple is headquartered, supposedly, Cupertino builds roads and schools for Apple and their children, the employees' children. But Apple pays zero in taxes to the city of Cupertino or to the state of California. And more importantly, there are no usury laws in Nevada. Why would there be? It's the gaming capital of the world, right? So Apple is sitting on $200 billion in cash, which is why they're now putting it on the street, getting into the loan sharking business. When you agree to the terms of service for Apple Pay, you sign away any protection from usurious interest rates, and that card is issued, I'm pretty sure, out of Nevada. So there aren't any caps that Apple has to worry about. They can charge you whatever they want. So once again, you tell me whether government is working. Government is working just fine. It's just not working for you. As I talked about on Monday's show, neoliberalism is not about laissez-faire capitalism. It is not about getting government out of the way. We were led to believe that that's what corporate America wants, right? When Reagan began this 50-year war against government, he said government isn't the solution, government is the problem. But he didn't mean that. He just said that. Conservatives like Ronald Reagan, neoliberals like Bill Clinton, who echoed Ronald Reagan during his inauguration, Bill Clinton, neoliberal Bill Clinton, said the age of big government is over. He didn't mean that. What he meant is government is over for you folk. It's going to get bigger for big business. And neoliberals always understood that government is the solution, right? Ronald Reagan famously said, government isn't the solution, government is the problem. Neoliberals and Reagan understood that government is the solution. The problem is democracy. Democracy is the problem. That's what we have to remember, and we lose sight of this all the time. The problem for neoliberals is democracy, not government. Government isn't going anywhere. Democracy is. We're going to lose our democracy. We're going to lose our republic. Democracy is the problem. As Professor Harvey J. Kaye has said on this show countless times, it was the Trilateral Commission in the 70s that set the stage for this war against democracy in favor of the richest 1%. It was the Trilateral Commission in the 70s. It was the Powell Memo. It was the Chamber of Commerce and the richest families in America who witnessed in the 60s and early 70s the rise of consumerism and environmentalism. And they said, we have a problem of too much democracy because people were having a say. And they said, hey, we need clean air, clean water. And that is not what the richest people in America want because it's too expensive. General Electric had after the Clean Water Act of 72, General Electric had to spend 20 years fighting the government because they didn't want to clean up the forever chemicals, the PCBs out of the Hudson River. Too much democracy. If you ask people to vote, they're going to say, yeah, I'd rather have clean water than higher profits for GE. So they launched a war against democracy, not government. They invaded and then took over our government. And now they run it. Now they own it, and it's working just fine. Government is not dysfunctional. Government is working. We lost the war for government. The richest 1% has won it. Labor has been decimated in the past 40 years. The rich don't pay taxes. They collect money from the government. They take from the government. They don't give to the government. The chip manufacturers are going to get $52 billion. The military-industrial complex is getting $60 billion for Ukraine. You cannot pass a single piece of legislation in Washington unless it benefits the wealthiest 1%. We've talked about this study that was conducted about 10 years ago, where they went through all the legislation that was successful coming out of Washington, going back about 20 years. And they looked to see whether or not the richest 1% supported that legislation. The study says, I think it came out of Princeton, or maybe it was Rutgers, I don't know, but I think it came out of New Jersey. The study concluded we're an oligarchy, that Congress will not pass any laws unless the oligarchs, the richest 1%, will approve them. You know, the infrastructure bill, bipartisan, that gets passed because the oligarchs approve it. The social safety net bill, never going to get passed, right? That bipartisan infrastructure bill got passed last year, sailed through Congress. Biden signed it immediately because it was a love letter to oil, gas, the internet companies. But Bernie's social safety net bill, Build Back Better, dead, dead, dead. Because that would put $2 trillion or more into the pockets of ordinary Americans by increasing the social safety net, making housing affordable, making education affordable, making healthcare affordable, prescription drugs. Because I wasn't breastfed as a child, my pediatrician gave me prescription drugs. I don't want to get into it. Prescription drugs. Ordinary Americans, they don't get that $2 trillion. Bipartisan infrastructure bill, right? Any money that's going to corporations or the richest 1%, have at it. Because our government has been taken over by the oligarchs, by the richest 1%. And this government, which works perfectly fine, its mission is to create precarity, not relieve it. This government wants us financially in a state of financial precarity because labor is the enemy. The government has been waging a war against the working class since Ronald Reagan fired the air traffic controllers. And at least the Republicans have the decency to pretty much admit it. You know, when they got rid of the COVID supplemental last year, I think it was Lindsey Graham who said, you know, if we keep paying Americans $600 a week, how are we going to get them to go back to work? We have to, pretty much said, we have to starve them out. We have to make them so hungry and terrified, they'll work for slave wages. This government is run by the wealthy. They have taken it over. And the people who stormed the Capitol on January 6th knew that in their clogged hearts. They knew that. They couldn't articulate it because they've been brainwashed. They're simpletons who have been brainwashed into believing the source of all their immiseration. You know, it's the Mexicans, the Guatemalans, the blacks, the Jews, the lesbians, the Jews, the Arabs, the Hispanics, the Jews, who are causing their financial precarity. That's we all know this. They're brainwashed. Well, the most dangerous people in America are the ones who can reach out to the people who sympathize with the insurrectionists. The most dangerous people in America, the most dangerous politicians in America, are the ones who can talk to people who sympathize with the insurrectionists and say, put down your bear spray, put down your weapons. I understand your anger. Now look, I can't make you like Arabs, Jews, the LGBTQ. I can't make you like Black people or women. But if you work with me, I can give you a livable wage, a semblance of job security, union protections, clean water, clean air, a financial future, a savings account, an education, a good education for your children that's free. And I can give you roads that don't collapse, bridges that don't collapse. I can guarantee you vacation time and vacations that will be affordable because you'll be getting more money. Okay? Now, I'm Jewish, I'm Black, I'm gay, I'm a woman. And you know what? You can still hate me. You can still hate me. But come with me on this. Come with me on this, because I'm going to place a bet that if you live in a community where you're not bombarded by the worry, the constant worry for your family's economic and physical security, I'm betting that you'll still hate me, but you won't act on your hatred for me. I'm going to bet that if your kids are going to a good school, I'm going to bet that if you're not saddled with debt, if you're not worried about the landlord evicting you or the bank kicking you off your land, I'm going to bet that the way I have sex isn't going to bother you all that much. I'm going to bet that you won't approve of it, but you're going to be too busy playing with your toys and your children to worry about which God I pray to. Because when people feel horrible, and that's the way the American people feel, they've been feeling this way longer than most of you realize, longer than most of my listeners realize. When people feel horrible, they have two choices. They can become paralyzed or they can lash out. And this is a problem that our government on both sides of the aisle is confronting. We have Americans who are angry and they know whose fault it is. They know whose fault it is. It is the fault of the people who sent all these charlatans to Washington, D.C. And the American people all know that. It is like somebody has a big booger in their nose. The government has the big booger in their nose, and we're all pretending we don't see it. It's like you get into an elevator at a fancy hotel and somebody farts, and you just pretend you don't smell it. But everybody's thinking the same thing. This government stinks. If you're on the left, if you're on the right, or on the middle, you know this government stinks because it works only for the richest 1%, and they stink. So I don't approve, obviously, of the people who took the Capitol on January 6th or tried to take the Capitol. They have every right to be angry. They don't have a right, nobody has a right to resort to violence, and they have no right to take it out on our government unless it's through peaceful protest, through lobbying, and of course, voting and donating to the right candidates. The insurrectionists were angry. They have an enemy. They just don't know who it is. It's the weapons manufacturers. It's the chip makers. It's the banks. It's the inherited wealth. It's the people who want this government, who make this government, literally hand them money at the expense of ordinary Americans. This is what's going on, right? Intel, which is doing perfectly fine, is going to get billions of dollars in a handout from the government. And they don't pay taxes. These corporations, the rich, they do not pay taxes. They do not create jobs. And if they do, by accident, create a job, it pays shit and it's soul crushing. You know, there's a myth in America of the entrepreneur. They love to tell us that we're a nation of entrepreneurs. The truth is, you cannot be an entrepreneur in this country without the mafia being your partner. And even when the mafia becomes your partner, you still fail. You just owe the mafia more money. And by mafia, I mean the moneylenders, the banks. The banks own your home. They own your business. They own your education. You cannot start a business in America without the banks getting a taste. And their taste is guaranteed. Their taste, depending on what kind of interest rates they're charging you, if it's a small business loan or a credit card loan, it all depends. They can be getting anywhere between 8 to 30% of your business. Depends on what kind of loan you got. These are mobsters. The Gambino family can't charge this much. So many of the insurrectionists on January 6th were people who bought into the lie that anyone can make it in America. Some of them fancied themselves entrepreneurs who believed Donald Trump's bullshit. But they were broke. They were in debt. But they identified with the richest 1% because they were brainwashed into thinking anyone can make it here in America. Right? Their anger comes from the fact that they couldn't articulate the realization that they are being robbed by the banks, that Trump University is a ripoff. There's no such thing as an entrepreneur because the system is rigged. Ashley Babbitt was killed by Capitol police officers on January 6. She voted for Barack Obama. She also served in our military. She also bought into the American dream. And so she started her own pool business. But in order to start her own pool business and become an entrepreneur, she was in the military. She got tired of taking orders. She wanted to be her own person. That's the promise that this country makes. So she started her own pool business, but she needed a partner. She needed the mafia to help her out. She took out a loan for her pool business. On July 1st, 2019, Ashley Babbitt was taken to court by the bank that lent her the money, and a judge ordered her to pay the bank $71,000. That's in what she borrowed, and then interest on what she borrowed, and fees, and now she owes the bank $71,000. And her small business, her pool business, failed. In fewer than 2 years, Ashley Babbitt went from an Obama supporter to a Trump supporter to a QAnon follower. And by January 6th, she was shot to death storming the Capitol. Fewer than 2 years that happens. On July 1st, 2019, right? That's when the bank ordered her to pay back the $71,000 loan on her failed pool business. She was a victim of the American lie. And she couldn't square it in her head. Like so many of these insurrectionists, they couldn't admit to themselves that they had been lied to. And they identify with the entrepreneurial class. Even though you can't be an entrepreneur in America without racking up massive debt, Americans, it's conceding defeat if you stop identifying with the entrepreneurial class, even though you failed. You failed. Your pool business failed. You're $71,000 in debt just to the bank on the business. God knows what the other credit card debt was. But if I identify with the working class, then I'm a loser. Then I'm just a loser. So they worship Donald Trump even more, because the more I throw myself towards Donald Trump, the more of a winner I am. Nobody tells the American people that you can't be an entrepreneur in America without racking up massive debt and going broke. 20% of all small businesses in America fail within the first year. That's according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. You have a 1 out of 5 chance of your business going under the first year. After 5 years of running your business, 50% of new businesses fail after 5 years. Looking at a 15-year horizon, 1/4 of small businesses succeed after 15 years. If you're going to go into your own business, you're going to fail. Only 1/4 of small businesses succeed after 15 years. If you're lucky as an entrepreneur, you paid yourself a salary, but you're going to rack up debt. You're going to declare bankruptcy. You're going to fail. You're going to take out more loans. You're going to borrow against whatever you have left. And you're going to be in debt for the rest of your life. But you're going to identify with the ruling class. You know, I'm going to identify with Donald Trump. That way I'm not a loser. A lot of college graduates who end up broke, they can't break their love for arugula and fine wine. They still identify with that great college they paid for, but they're broke. But they won't identify with the working class because then that's conceding defeat. The same way with the insurrectionists, I'm going to identify with Donald Trump. Otherwise, I'm conceding defeat. I'm just a poor person who racked up massive debt. And Trump is perfect to identify with because he has spent his entire adult life in debt. Unlike Ashley Babbitt, he made it work. But the people who stormed the Capitol, like that real estate agent who bragged about flying on a private plane to get to the insurrection, check her bank balances, check her credit scores, see how much money they actually have. People who are solvent didn't storm the Capitol because they had too much capital to lose. For example, Steve Bannon is worth tens of millions of dollars. Goldman Sachs, believe it or not, he has Seinfeld money. I'm not making that up. Somehow, Steve Bannon has Seinfeld money. He invested in Seinfeld somehow. He didn't storm the Capitol. He was meeting at the Willard Hotel the night before, Willard Hotel right next door to the White House. He was meeting with Giuliani. Mark Meadows, the chief of staff for Trump, phoned in on that meeting. They were planning some kind of insurrection, but they didn't dirty their hands by marching with the insurrectionists. Government is working. Government is working. It's not dysfunctional. It's working just fine for the rich. It's working just fine for the rich.